alone, no chaperone can get our number. The world's in slumber, let's misbehave. There's something wild about you, child, that's so contagious. Let's be outrageous, let's misbehave.
Today's special guest speaker is Mr. Rob Kozlowski. He is a film historian, journalist, author, and educator. He has made a lifetime study of comedy in film and in live performance. He has taught comedy writing at Second City Chicago and at the Cinema and Television Arts Department of Columbia College Chicago. Mr. Kozlowski, his first two books in the entertainment industry are The Art of Chicago Improv and The Actor's Guide to the Internet. His most recent book is Becoming Nick and Nora, The Thin Man and the Films of William Powell and Myrna Loy. This book is a dual biography of William Powell and Myrna Loy, charting their lives and careers from their parallel paths as screen villains to the beloved stars they became in the Thin Man series. And the book examines their films in the context of the time in which they were made and why these films still resonate with today's audiences. Mr. Kozlowski's research of archival studio records not available to prior biographers dispels oft-repeated stories that, including the one that about leading William Powell and Myrna Loy to being cast in the Thin Man series. He will be signing his book in the lobby after our discussion following the screening of today's film. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Rob Kozlowski.
Thank you, Aliece, and thank you very much to the Film Society of Screwball Comedy for hosting me for this screening. I think you're going to love this movie. How many of you have seen the first Thin Man movie? Okay, great. You're in, well, if you love the first one, you'll almost certainly love the second one. It's one of my favorite titles for a sequel because inevitably MGM executives asked what comes after the Thin Man? After the Thin Man. So one of the challenges, as you may or may not know, The Thin Man was based on a novel by Dashiell Hammett, who was also very well known for writing The Maltese Falcon and The Glass Key and several other detective novels. And The Thin Man was released in June of 1934 by MGM after an extremely fast pre-production, production, and post-production schedule. MGM bought the rights to the novel in January, and the film was released in June. So they went through the entire process of casting the film, writing it, filming it, editing it in 5 months. You do not see that today. The film was an unexpected smash hit. Nominated for multiple Oscars, including Best Picture, and the film made superstars out of William Powell and Myrna Loy, who previously to The Thin Man were primarily known for dramas. We know them today, 90 years later, as great comedy stars, but they both started their careers as villains in silent films, and their personas eventually evolved in the early 30s to become dramatic stars. So their emergence with The Thin Man becoming comic stars was completely unexpected and a wonderful surprise for MGM. Naturally, as with any enormous smash hit, once the film became such a box office sensation, MGM knew pretty much immediately that they wanted to make a sequel. Hans Stromberg, the producer of the films, came up with a treatment just a couple of months after the release of The Thin Man, and one of the only things, he basically wanted to bring back every supporting character from the first movie. He knew that he wanted to start the second movie immediately after the end of the first movie. For those of you who have seen The Thin Man, it takes place during the Christmas season, and once the mystery is solved, Nick and Nora get on the train from New York to go back to their home in San Francisco. So with this second film, they've just arrived in San Francisco, and it's New Year's Eve. That's all I'm going to tell you right now. But that's all that Hans Stromberg could come up with in August of 1934. The problem was, of course, that the author Dashiell Hammett did not have any more Nick and Nora Charles stories. So MGM, much to their chagrin, had to hire Dashiell Hammett to come up with a screen story and screenplay. Hammett was notoriously unreliable as an unrepentant alcoholic it took him about a year to come up with a screen story and a treatment, but he came up with one. And I think it was September of 1935, he delivered the treatment to MGM, and screenwriters Albert Hackett and Frances Goodrich, a married couple, took on the mantle of writing the screenplay for the second film. A lot of credit is given to the personality of Nick and Nora Charles to Hammett's original novel. But if you read Hammett's original novel, there's a lot that's in that first movie that's in the novel, but so much of it is created by the screenwriters Goodrich and Hackett. A very vibrant, creative, ingenious married couple who worked as writing partners for decades and who contributed to the screenplays for such future classics as It's a Wonderful Life and The Diary of Anne Frank. Goodrich and Hackett really gave Nick and Nora their personalities. And of course, without William Powell and Myrna Loy, we wouldn't be sitting here 90 years later watching the film on the big screen. So Goodrich and Hackett delivered were able to work on the screenplay in late 1935. There was one little hitch, Myrna Loy. By this point, at the beginning of 1935, once The Thin Man was over, MGM wanted to cast William Powell and Myrna Loy in every movie together. So they just wanted to pair them up in everything. And so they paired them up in a movie called Escapade. Now, if you've never heard of Escapade, it's because no one can see it. It's been tied up in legal problems for decades and decades. So you can't even get it in bootlegs on the internet. But Myrna Loy was cast basically as sort of this winsome Austrian girl who had very much of a supporting role to William Powell. Now, Loy wasn't very demanding, but because of the success of The Thin Man, she felt that she had some leverage. And she said, I need a raise. Because basically Loy was getting paid half as much as William Powell at this point. And she said, all I want is to get paid what Bill gets paid. That's all. MGM did not agree. And when Loy was cast in this film, she read the film Escapade, she read the screenplay and was like, this is terrible. This part is so small, and I'm playing sort of this weak, sort of maid character. This is absolutely not for me. But Louis B. Mayer, as was his habit, begged and begged and begged and did a little crying thing in his office, that she should, do the movie. So she acquiesced. And after a week of filming Escapade in early 1935, MGM started looking for somebody else to play the part, realizing that it was incredibly wrong for Myrna Loy. Well, Myrna was not happy about this. And so she, basically was asked to be released from her contract and eventually won that battle. And she went off to Europe basically for a year-long strike. So filming of After the Thin Man was delayed for quite some time. Interestingly, Escapade introduced to American audiences the Austrian actress Louise Rainer, who replaced Myrna Loy, and Rainer would have a very, very successful, albeit very short career. She would win Best Actress Academy Award, the very first person to do this. She would win it back-to-back for The Great Ziegfeld and The Good Earth. So it wasn't until September 1936 that After the Thin Man started filming. More than 2 years after the previous film was released. And because the first film was such a success, After the Thin Man had a budget that was nearly 3 times as much as they spent on The Thin Man. They did location shooting in San Francisco. There's somewhat of a lavish production number. MGM just loved to stick in a production number in the middle of every movie. Like, even if it wasn't a musical, there was a subtly musical number. After the Thin Man has that. The film is about 20 minutes longer. It has more characters. It really sort of, set the template for sequels, right? The sequels have to be more. Fortunately, though, all of the charm of the first film is retained in the second film. And my wife, for one, actually prefers this film to the first. She loves the first film, but she thinks this one's just a smidge better. And you might agree. So one of the things, so this was the second of 6 Thin Man films. And what was particularly valuable for these films for MGM was that, you had a very large supporting cast, and they were able to put a lot of their contract actors in the film. So one of the things I want you to watch out for, one of the supporting actors in this film is Alyssa Landy. You probably don't know that name, but she was another actress who came from Austria. She made a big splash on Broadway in 1930, and Fox Films signed her to a contract, and she took lead roles in films such as a lot that you've never heard of. Surrender and Body and Soul, and she was sort of seen as a leading lady in early Fox talking pictures. Unfortunately, her career stalled. Fox Film went bankrupt and merged with 20th Century Pictures to become 20th Century Fox. Landy's contract was ended, and she signed with MGM as a supporting character. So the Alyssa Landy that you see in this film is an actor in decline. Someone who used to be in leading roles. Ironically, in the 1931 film Body and Soul, which Landy had a leading part in, a young actress named Myrna Loy had a tiny, tiny part. So the roles were completely reversed for this film. Another supporting actor in this film is James Stewart. You might have heard of him. This was very early in Stewart's career at MGM. He was just signed the previous year and made his debut in a film called The Murder Man with Spencer Tracy. And in 1936, he was cast in no less than 9 films. And it was MGM's habit to, whenever they signed a new player under contract, they just threw them in bunches and bunches of films. So if you look at Jimmy Stewart in 1936, there's definitely some roles that you wouldn't expect him in. For example, he plays a supporting role in Rosemarie, the Jeanette MacDonald Nelson Eddy operetta. He's in Born to Dance, and another musical. So there's all sorts of roles. So he has a small part in here. He's with Alyssa Landy. Other actors of note are Sam Levine, who plays a cop in this picture. He would, 15 years later, catapult to fame playing Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls on Broadway. And another actor whose name you won't recognize is Dorothy McNulty. She would change her name several years later to Penny Singleton and rise to fame in 28 movies playing Blondie Bumstead, based on the comic strip. So a lot of other nascent MGM stars would be in future Thin Man pictures. Donna Reed has a small role in Shadow of the Thin Man, which also features Stella Adler, the famous acting teacher, in one of only 3 movies she made. So after The Thin Man was released in December 1936, it was another big hit for MGM. And they went to work on a second sequel and a third film, which would be called Another Thin Man, but that's a story for another day. Please enjoy the film. One of the things that I like to tell people to look out for, in 1936, location shooting was still pretty much of a rarity because the studios, they mostly made studio-bound movies. So look out for the shot in which you see in the background the Golden Gate Bridge under construction.
We're all alone, no chaperone, can't get our number. The world's in slumber, let's misbehave. There's something wild about you, child, that